Welcome to the Data Leadership Lessons Podcast. I'm your host, Anthony J. Algman. Data is everywhere in our businesses, and it takes leadership to make the most of it. We bring you the people, stories, and lessons to help you become a data leader. We've partnered with Dataversity to provide listeners with 20% off your first training center purchase with promo code ALGMANDL. Go to dataleadershiptraining.com to learn more. Today, on episode 79, we welcome Ahmed Elsamadisi. Ahmed is the founder and CEO of Narrator.ai, a data modeling platform that can answer any and all questions about data in just minutes. Ahmed was named a member of Forbes 30 Under 30 for 2021 and was previously the first member of the data team at WeWork. Ahmed, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you, Anthony, for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So we're excited to have you. So why don't you just take a few minutes and give us kind of the story overview of your career and how your earlier experiences led up to doing what you do now?
Yeah, so I surprisingly started very core in the AI space. I worked on autonomous cars in 2010. So think about full self-driving cars, 2010, when they had just came out of the Urban Challenge. And then was really focusing on the aspect of actually human and robot interaction, really focused on how humans and robots make decisions together to solve problems. Fast forward that to ended up working as an AI engineer for the US government at Raytheon, doing missile defense, like on nuclear missiles and tracking discrimination on like short range and long range missiles. And then I had like a career mental switch where I was like, I've been doing so much nuance in AI. I want to bring this to people in the world. And my actual way, and most people don't know this story, but the way I actually wanted to bring AI to the world was I was really into dancing, and I wanted to build like this suit that you can wear that can help you dance better, like that would like electrocute you to move your body so that you dance correctly, and it would know what you were doing. And yeah, I was like, this is gonna be great. I've been like watching all these YouTube dance videos. This will solve my problems. I don't know if my position is right, and I ended up going to WeWork to like talk to the people there about like the exciting world of dance videos. And what ends up happening is they're like, you've spent your whole career working as like a single individual contributor. Why don't you work for WeWork and like build a data team? And I was like, no. I'm like a nuanced expert in AI. I don't want to build data systems. I want to like use them. So long story short, I ended up joining WeWork with this idea of like, we're going to build smart buildings. And I had worked with WeWork in the past. So I had this like long history with WeWork in 2012. And then this is now 2015 when I joined them again. And I'm like, they're like, you're going to have so much resources because WeWork is exploding and you're going to be able to build like, make the building smart, do all this dope stuff. And I was like, hell yeah, excited. And I get into the world of data and I start learning about it. And like, everything is a lot more complicated than I remembered it to be. I was like, wow, when you're dealing with like a single system, like I was on missile defense systems, you have less computing power than on like your phone. And I had like worked a lot with microcontrollers for autonomous cars. So like the first server I spun up to like process data was like on a Raspberry Pi. And people were like, oh, where are you hosting it? And I was like, right here. This is it. This is my device. This is a server. They're like, why don't you like upload it to the cloud? And I was like, this is like $12. This works really well. Like, what are we possibly doing? So I ended up diving into data and realizing that a lot of the questions, like as a person who comes from a background of like complex decisions, thousands of objects in space, like high definition reasoning, questions like how many sales I have and how many people that came to our website called us were really hard. So I ended up building the data system for WeWork one time. And as people asked more questions, the data system reached its like limits. And I was like, aha, I'm going to refactor and I'm going to swap out some tools. And whether I was doing like, I swapped out a warehouse, I swapped out our transformation layer, whether it was initially Cron, then Luigi from Spotify, then Airflow, then built our own custom one, then used dbt. And then I bought all the BI tools. We tried like Wave Analytics and Chartio and Tableau and Looker. And I built the same system every like 6 months. I would be like, let's refactor system. And my team was 45 people. We had a lot of people trying to answer questions. And yet still questions like how many people that came to our website called us would take like weeks. And ended up starting a program called Data Cult, which was really funny. It was like, okay, there's a problem here. Why does everything take so hard? You clearly don't know all the tables we have. You're not reading our data dictionaries. You're not seeing our cataloging. We've built so many tables. We had like 12,000 tables in our warehouse and 900 in our transformation layer. I'm like, let's put it to test. So I took people and trained them on how to use our tables and data, and quickly realized that there's a fundamental problem in data, which is that why these questions, asking good questions is really hard. But the reason why nobody asks good questions is because answering good questions is fucking the worst. It's like nearly impossible. Like every time you ask a complex question, try to understand churn, you're like, oh, that's a month of work. And then you give it to them and then there's a follow-up. Well, that's another month. And that led me to leave. And I was like, I think I understand why this problem occurs, but I don't know a solution. And I ended up leaving to found Narrator to solve this specific problem. And 3 years later, we had a solution that does it.
I have so many questions. So many questions. All right. So so coming from my background, my experience, I'm a data platform builder. I build a lot of these big systems that people use. So I can definitely feel your pain on the like WeWork side, where the everything I always talk about, like when we're turning over a rock, right? Like you're picking up a rock, that analogy of like leave no stone unturned, right? So we're going to turn over a stone, and every time in the data space when we turn over a stone, it's worse than we hoped it would be, and also there's 100 more stones. And like that's the life of building data platforms and trying to make sense of all of this. And so while I really want to ask questions about the AI enabled dancing suit, because I could personally really use that, I think my kids would definitely donate their allowances to have me have that. I'm going to just we're not going to talk about that because we only have so much time, but I want to understand, like, I have to understand how can you possibly have solved for this kind of massive complexity when, I mean, you've seen it firsthand. Like, this isn't, it gets me to this point around, with AI, they talk about how the very specific functions, and I forget the terminology for it, but when there's a specific activity, the programming or enabling the AI for that is very is much simpler than a generalized AI, which makes things much more complex. And that was what I was thinking about as you were talking about some of the things, like as much as missile guidance systems seem like they would be very difficult, I can imagine the variables involved there are only so many compared to people and their behaviors. Like when we start thinking about people and their behaviors, now it's going to get exponentially more difficult.
Yeah.
So how do you reconcile all that, and how does Narrator.ai do what it does?
Great question. So there's two parts of data, and I think this is like something I say a lot. Everyone in the world thinks they have a data analytics problem. They're like, my dashboard can't let me slice this by a specific thing I'm looking for. Or I can't see this number, or why can't I do this? Oh, this takes too long to give me the answer. And like, why is my dashboarding slow? Why is my warehouse slow? These are all not data analytics problems. They're actually data engineering problems. And we're going to talk about why this entire field of analytics engineers got created and why everything is actually an analytics engineering problem, to be specific. Like, actually, it's not even data engineering. It's actually this analytics engineering problem that's the core of everything that cascades. And then there's data analytics solutions. So Narrator, we'll talk about our innovation, because we do a data engineering innovation, a fundamentally different way to doing data engineering, or data analytics engineering, whatever you want to call it. And then all the AI stuff is actually in the evaluating. So as a person who studied human-robot interaction, figuring out what's a good question to ask is a human-level task. No robot will do that. Anyone, take Watson, we've used Einstein. Those things suck. Like, anyone who's listening to it and challenges me, like, try it. All these AI solutions that try to predict churn suck. The reason is there's too many factors. But if you, as a person, can come up with a really good question, having a machine evaluate the data for you, to check for significance, to do consistency checks, to understand trends, to understand behavior over time in a very specific, limited scope. Computers are really good at that. So that's kind of the separation. And the robots, the computer's job is to provide you with a story that you can understand so that you take action. This whole thing is like, think about it as a tool. Don't think about it as a case. But putting that aside right now, the real innovation of Narrator is this initial part. So why does data, like you said, right? So anyone who doesn't do data, it's like, I love talking to them and talking to people who do data because things seem very different. So when you ask a person who's like, the question I'm going to use here, because I think it's like the easiest one to understand, is, oh, what percent of our people, every time somebody comes to our website, what percent of them call us? And a non-data person will say, easy, like look at every single person, see if they came to our site, did they call us? Yes, put a 1, no, put a 0, compute that number, divide by submit, divided by the count is the rate of people.
Sure.
And you're like, great. In imaginary world where that's fucking possible. And a data person goes, oh my God. Okay, website is in this system, which we have the data in the warehouse and with page views. Okay, I take page views, got to make them into sessions. Okay, well now I have call data in Salesforce. Oh shit, my call data is on a phone number, so I got to map the phone number to an email or my global identifier. I got to map the cookie to an email. Now I have a same user. Okay, well, how do I join a call to a web visit?
Yeah.
I don't know. There's no magical web visit ID on every call. So then I'm like, okay, well, maybe the UTM parameters on the website, if I copy it over when they call and then Salesforce and the user tags them, and then you start creating this crazy process and you write thousands of lines, and then you build a table that has every website visit and it's like 1 billion lines long, and that's what you use to answer the question. So you look at me and you're like, yeah, I get that. Of course, that's what you do. While the stakeholder is like, why did that take you 2 weeks? And you're like, you have no fucking clue what I had to go through to give this question. And then they're like, okay, well, did those people submit a ticket? And you're like, did they submit a ticket before coming to a website? Are you kidding me? That's another system, and that identifier is different. Now I got to tie, you think that there's keys exist? So that entire thing, the reason why we built all these tables in the middle is because of that fundamental problem, is that most questions that are interesting bridge systems, and every time you bridge a system, there's no foreign key, and you got to come up with a crazy world to do it. Now, even harder, if you're depending on tables and something depends on it, there's so much code that goes into that there's so many assumptions baked in. So do you see that? At least the whole key thing here is the fundamental problem in this world.
Oh, absolutely. This tracks so well. This is like therapy now. So this is great.
Okay, so now what if I told you that this entire way that we've done this, when you study the history of this, of why we do it this way, like whenever something gets so complicated, I'm always like, this is the problem I left to solve. I was like, okay, every time they ask me, somebody would be like, well, how do I relate this? And I'm like, oh shit, don't ask me that question. Like, give it to the data team. Like, we need to spend months on this. Like, this is just so complicated. And now we went through 3 questions and we went to 1 question and a follow-up, and we're already in like this complexity. We're like, every data engineer listening to this or every analytics engineer has anxiety right now. There's like PTSD happening to all the listeners going, yeah, I've done that. And that's only 1 question and 1 follow-up. Can't even wait for the second follow-up. And then how come this number doesn't match with this number, and all these things. So at its core, this problem is a join problem. Joins don't exist. The reason why we get there when you study history is because of relational databases and how visualization tools work. You need a Y table to plot X and Y, and relational databases only work on join keys. Okay? Now, you change the relational database, sure, but the unfortunate reality is the world is all relational right now. There's no changing it. So what if I was to tell you, let's do something a little bit different? So right now we're taking the way that the stakeholder is thinking about the problem, and they've simplified it in their head into this weird timeline. And we're like mapping our world into it. Like we're trying to answer the question, what if there was an intermediary step where we mapped our world to a common understanding that the same stakeholder would have? We call this thing the activity schema. So what if, instead of mapping the data, what if it was just started session, called, called, started session in a time series way. Then, if you had a new way of relating data and a unique way of joining data, I can literally do what the human being is thinking and pull it. And just pull the call and then add that data for the call into the same table. And now I have that why table that I need to answer that question. Of course, that's really tricky. How do you do that? But the interesting is that one unique data model, the reason why we call it universal, we call it activity schema. It's a universal model. It turns out every business in the world can be modeled that way because everyone talks about it. And it turns out every question in the world can be asked as a function of your entity that you care about, your user or customer or building or your pet, and ask about them doing these actions in time. So if I'm able to build a system in the warehouse that can take your data in SQL, map it to our structure, and then give you a new way to relate that data, it turns out that as a human being, you can easily do what we call invisible data prep. Instead of needing analytics engineers to write SQL and do thousands of lines, they can literally say, give me every session and give me in between those sessions the first call the customer had. And now we have a Y table that has the session data and the call data instantly available. Now that you can give it to an AI to then analyze and slice and dice and do that stuff for you. And that's kind of the world that we ended up creating. It sounds easier than done because this takes us 3 years after building systems many times, but that's kind of the world. That's what we ended up building, is this unique way to do the data. And it turns out it just works. And it makes a lot of the questions so simple. And if you've seen me in any podcast, I don't do this on podcasts, but if you ever come to any of my talks, I'm notoriously known as the Ask Me Anything guy, because I'll stand on stage and I'll say, ask me any question and I will live take any question. Give me the question that took you the longest time. Give me a question that's the hardest for you and watch me answer it live on stage, like using Narrator. And I think people then be like, wait. And it turns out all complex questions are bridging systems. And when you do it in this time series way, it becomes so easy. And that's what we did.
I mean, it's amazing. And I would be lying if I said I actually understood how it actually is working, because take me through it at even at a simpler level, that problem that you introduced around how many people that have visited our website are calling us. How does that actually make that association when that linkage doesn't exist?
So the linkage does exist. It's in our human mind. So the linkage is always existing because there is two parts here. One, assuming that we can stitch the identity together, which I'm not going to dive into, but Narrator spends a lot of energy in making sure that linking of user. But let's say you link that user together.
That's what I would expect. That's the hard part to me, is that knowing which web session, which call line up.
Yeah. Well, there's two problems there. There's making sure that we can tie the same user across the different systems, which we'll talk about. That's called identity resolution. And two, lining it up. So the lining it up actually this is the magic of it. It's going to make a lot more sense for someone who's not in data, but for data. So think about it this way. What we're doing in SQL and compiling down is, let's zoom in on Ahmed. Ahmed had 4 sessions, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, Ahmed had 1 call. It happened to be that the 1 call, if you align them in time, is right here. So now I can say this first session did not have a call. This second session, oh look, based on time between the sessions, I see this call right here. I'm going to bring it and create it at a Y table now. Now this session had no call, this session had no call. So now I have 4 rows for the 4 sessions, and the second session has a bunch of columns that have the call data in it. We call this way of relating the data. This one is one of the 11 relationships that's known as first in between. In between sessions, give me the first time it's happened. And it turns out you can do first ever, last ever, first in between, last in between, first before, last before, and aggregate those things in before. So when you think about things in time happening, by using time and being able to squash, suppose you have to deal with duplications and all that stuff, but forget that for a second. By using time, I can actually create that association. And it works because when you think about how you used to debug your data, you would select a customer and look at every table, select star, and then see how they line up and be like, okay, now I know what happened. So that's kind of how we relate it. How we do our identity stitching is a little bit more cumbersome and way harder to explain via podcast. But if you built an entire system around one table, you should read about a little bit. We have a blog post on it. We have a docs on it that can explain in details how we stitch the identity. It is multi-user, multi-device, recursive identity stitching that is very elegantly done, so that you can kind of get really clean stitching of the user. So trust that part, or read about it and dive into it. But the second part is the real big innovation, is this kind of temporal way of relating data. And it solves a lot of problems. You don't duplicate rows ever. You don't drop rows ever. Whatever you're starting from always stays the same, and you kind of grow as you add it on the right. And it makes it super easy. And now, if there's a null, I just put 1 or 0, if it's a null timestamp. And now I can just, if I sum it, it's the total number of people called. If I average the 1 and 0, which is the same as summing divided by the count, I have the conversion rate per website. Not per customer, but per website visit, which is the really hard part. And it just like makes it really easy. We can go through other questions if you have like, what about this question that took me a month to do? I'll do it live. Like, let's take questions and we can say like, that's just, and I'll just translate it into these concepts of activities and these relationships in between. And then that's it. And then you learn that translation after a couple of steps, because you're just imagining that journey. And once you learn that translation, then it's instantly, every question you have can just be instantly answered, and all that data can be prepped.
That's starting to make more sense to me, because it sounds, and I'll oversimplify to see if I'm starting to understand this, but like, I get why the identity stitching is difficult, and we'll table that one. Totally get that. That's because in my mind that's the hardest part. But what I like about the way you're explaining this is understanding that time is crucially important in almost every human interaction of any kind. I've been on a soapbox a lot recently around how our data catalogs are failing us, because they actually handle time very poorly under most circumstances. They act like these data assets or these data objects are static, when that couldn't be further from the truth. They're in constant motion, they're in constant change, and if we don't have a temporally aware data catalog, what we have is just a big mess. Like, and its usefulness is degraded because of it. But that's my soapbox that I've just been ranting about for months now. But so as I think about the way you're doing this, it sounded to me like you're taking some of the, because as you pointed out, relational databases, the relational structure of transactions that exist in the world around us is not going to change. That's how operational systems are going to work. That's how transactions are going to work. That's how web works. All of that is going to be what that is. But the way you've done is you've kind of said, okay, well, let's take the best of SQL for where it can help us, and relational databases where it can help us, but then let's also bring in some good practices around some of the NoSQL constructs and the kind of search and retrieval aspects. And you're putting it in a wide table that will have all these optional columns in there, but it's in a structure that can lend itself to aggregation very well, which is what relational databases do very well, and those kind of heavy calculations that will need that horsepower to drive the answers that people are looking for in analytics and dashboarding. And so that sounds to me like a viable path. Like that makes sense to me. Am I starting to understand that from a remedial level?
You definitely are. And I think you're combining pieces. And the thing about this thing is that this isn't unique. Like there's definitely the relationships part is super unique, but this idea of taking your data and putting it into a single table that's time-based is like, CDPs have been doing that for a while. Like, we're just the first one to do it inside your warehouse so that you can access all your data. The second thing is, like, if you get into, like, if you ever learn about Facebook used to have a customer dim actions. They used to do the same concept of a long table. The problem with long tables, again, like you mentioned, right? Querying those long tables and doing those time-based joins is really tricky. And there are some warehouses that are specifically designed to do that, but you don't want to have a warehouse just for that. So like Narrator's innovation is like, we stay inside your warehouse. We build this one table inside your warehouse that you can see. We do everything I talked about in SQL. Like, a lot of people like to think about it as like super fancy pivots, like very nuanced, powerful pivots that you're doing in this. So you have this long table, and long tables have a lot of other benefits, like in storage, super cheap to storage because they are tiny. We're talking about 10 columns is how big the activity schema is. Super fast. Warehouses can run through that table with partitions super quickly. It's what they're built for. Super cheap to update. Instead of having to rebuild all the tables at once, you just build one and you insert all the new data. Like, super easy to debug. You can just look at it in time. They have all these benefits of it. And then you kind of let that table solve all those problems for you. And the moment you have a question, you pick what you need, you kind of do that fancy pivot using Narrator, and then you have that table that you can then on top of that, you can then aggregate, plot, visualize, do everything you need. And it turns out, because that table all happens in SQL, now you have this pivoted Y table in SQL that you can do all the stuff, which your warehouse will just chunk through in milliseconds. So now you are dealing with this, like you kind of got the best of both worlds and you've created a mental model that works. And there's a lot of other benefits of having the same exact like schema for every company. So why is it so cool? Well, first of all, it solves a lot of data engineering problems that you and I experience. But it's even better because we could take a couple of steps further. If you were to leave your company and start, like if a data analyst went from company A to company B and they both use Narrator, the onboarding time is 0. Like you already know, you just read the name of the activities. Data cataloging, they don't need to exist anymore because everything is just an action, an activity, and you can read it and understand it. And you can always right click and see some example customer journeys to see how that happened. Data dictionaries you don't need because everything is just building blocks. You kind of have like an infinite metrics layer because you can pull in pieces from anywhere activity. You don't need to think about all these things. Data preparation doesn't need to exist because that little pivot is instant data preparation. Anomaly detection is super easy and it's built into Narrator because it's one table so that you don't have to worry about it. We have the same standard schema. Analyses, we have a library of analyses available, can be reused because every company now has the same exact table structure and same assumptions and guarantees. And eventually more and more algorithms and the whole world. Like what this happened, if you study like history of Salesforce did this for sales. Salesforce was like, oh, we're going to standardize all sales data into like accounts, leads, opportunities, and tasks. And then we're going to build like a stack exchange in the world around it. And when they first came out, people were like, no. My sales business is too complicated for you to explain it in these simple objects. No. And nowadays we're all like, yeah, of course. I don't know what else. What would you have? Like what did you have outside of opportunities? Like what did you do? And it turns out they did a lot of fucking things. Just like in data right now, we have a lot of tables. And then you move to a narrative world and you're like, wait, yeah, everything is not just that one simple table. Shit. And I think that's the exciting part of why I really got excited because the world changes with the narrative world because you get way more benefits and people can start sharing, reusing, leveraging. People can start talking about things using the same language. Like when you read a blog post and you see what Netflix did, you're like, great, but I want to implement it. Why don't you have one button? If you both have the same exact underlying activity schema, you both use Narrator, one button, you can say, run that analysis on my data. And Netflix can publish that analysis and you can be like, done. I thought your blog was cool. I ran it on my data. Some of the assumptions, some of the things worked, some of the things wouldn't. Dope. Like that's the world that you want to get to. And I think standardization creates that. And that's all of the core assumption that every single data can be represented in a time series way, which it can be. And we can understand how that's possible, not possible. We can go through hundreds of examples. And the fact that this way of relating data using this temporal joins, what we call relationships, allows you to answer any question, which I will say, again, proof to me by contradiction. Find me one question I can't answer, and I've been doing this for a while, and then throw my company in the garbage. But like, you won't be able to. It's just like, it's not possible because for you to explain a question, you have to describe it using English, and English by definition forces you to give me something about actions and time.
So I have one for you that I'd love to understand how you would break it down because I think it's a relatively simple problem to understand, but a very difficult one to actually solve for under most circumstances. So say I represent a casino company and we want to have our top 1,000 customers come to some sort of celebration, gift celebration in the end of the year. I hear there's Vegas casinos that do this. And so what we want to know is who are our 1,000 best customers? And it's complicated because it's not a simple metric of who lost the most money in our casinos. It could also be who played the most in our casinos. It could be who risked the most but got lucky. It could be who visited the most times but generally didn't gamble much but spent tons in the retail establishments or at the restaurants or at the shows or whatever. So you think about it and like just a few variables can lead to a really big question of how do we whittle that down to 1,000 best customers?
Great. Now, the thing that I would do, so there's two things here, right? So defining what is the best customer, what best is, I think that's a human problem. But giving you, like right now, you said, give me every customer, give me how much money they've lost at that, until now. We can easily do it. It's called aggregate before. And you can look at it over time, right? You can even go further. Like instead of thinking about it per year, like you can create the last per every year in the past. But let's just say for now, give me all customers currently. So anyone who's first time, anyone who's ever played created an account. So now I have and now have a unique row per customer. Give me aggregate all. Let's say you'll probably have like lost money or like replenished account, whatever action represents the transaction. Sum up all that money. You probably have an action called play the game because a customer plays the game. So you say sum up total number of played games. Sum up the average number, the average time between the first and last game, and give me the average the rate of gameplay. So I can easily create those metrics right now as I'm describing them. I'm literally using the words that I would click into a narrator. And now I have a table that has every customer, and I have these different variables. Now I can decide, right? What I would do honestly in this narrator, I would say, great, now let me go for each one of them, create a separate tab, and let's filter for the top 100, and let me see why that doesn't work. So then I would right click on that customer and let me see their journey and be like, okay, this customer looks like they're good, but I wouldn't consider them the best because they took a big gap and they haven't played in a while. I'm like, interesting. Okay, give me the maximum time between actions and add that as a variable. Now, like this level of conversation that I'm having with you, if we had this casino open and my computer was open now in Narrator, we would be having this conversation, but we would be seeing the data. So I'm like, okay, well, let's see that gap. Okay, well, now it's interesting. Let's grab these customers based on the combination of these three features that I find interesting and see if it does it. And then we can dive in and we can slowly dive. So that's one way of like doing it, which is like more of like the humans trying to pick which ones they want, exploratory way. The other way is like, the other way of doing this thing. So what I wanted to show you here was the magic of Narrator is preparing that data and how we can easily add those columns in this time series way. I have no idea what your data looks like, but I know what in a time series way I can answer and build that table. And that works. And then we see this exploration, and as we're kind of like investigating and thinking and being like, oh, I want to know that, and add it in. I want to know that, add it in, which is something you cannot do in data tools right now at all. The second level that I would like to say is, what is your goal? So where does the Narrator's AI come in? Well, Narrator's AI is really useful when you start having goals. So like when you say best player, what do you want? The player who comes back the most? The player who spends the most money? Like what do you, as the end of day casino, usually you're optimizing for like average revenue per customer or LTV, or maybe returning customers. You say, I want to see a returning customer, or like a weighted return based on the money you spent. Sure. And then what I would say, okay, well, let's figure out the factors that leads to that. Is it like number of times out of money? And Narrator is really good at taking that hypothesis and evaluating it for you. And then what you can do with Narrator is say, let's see if that matters. And then you check if it matters, and Narrator will be like, okay, this matters. And here's a story in English explaining to you all the things how I would think about this problem. It's so good that if you read it, you would say that a human wrote it for you. And you would then be like, okay, it turns out these are the 4 things that I discovered matters to maximize LTV. Now, when you're looking for customers, when you're looking for top best customers, you look for customers who are showing those main things, because it might be that like, and then once you give them, let's say you invite them over, you can say, how does inviting them over impact their likelihood to come back? And you can start kind of recursively answering those questions, and so on and so on and so on. And I think that's the key thing, is understanding the drivers that affects your business, understanding the goal you're trying to have. And then once you find the drivers, find the people who are showing drivers. Because it might be that they've not spent a lot of money, but they've only been there for 2 months, but they've come back every 3 days, and that might be really good. And that's kind of the game that you're playing. But the idea is that once you come up with these things and you're testing them, you can see the people, look at their journey, and then create that list instantly. And that's how easy it is to answer this kind of complex question in like 5 minutes. I just did with you live.
Well, and what I like about this is that you answered it both from the perspective of Anthony, if he were running a casino, who doesn't know much about casinos, and like, because I think the actual question, like the core of what they're going for is, by inviting these people to whatever event this is, I want to maximize my future revenue over some period of time, the next year or what have you. I want to invite the people that will lead to that increase in revenue, right? Or in that increase in profit ultimately. And so that the point of it seems relatively straightforward. When Anthony approaches it, I really resonated with how you explained, like, we could go in and we could start by saying, hey, here's what we think may help us understand what those people would look like, and we can start looking at and digging into the data and understanding, oh wait, this probably isn't good, oh we should add this in, and we're kind of like, you know, mixing in the kitchen, we're cooking in the kitchen by feel and taste, right? We're trying to understand that. But in reality, if a casino were actually asking you at Narrator.ai to do this, this is a problem they've solved. They know what their math is to do that. This is not a new thing for them. They've figured it out, and they've probably done it over many years, and they've figured out, okay, this is what, as a company, we will use to predict future profitability in our customers. We want to plug this in. You explain kind of how you would do that too, because if you know what that math looks like, you would be able to plug that in and then get to that point where the narrator could actually explain, which I assume is where the name sort of comes from. It explains what that math is in normal human words that somebody who's looking at it can understand.
Yeah, exactly. And I think I think you should look at Narrator as more of like the superpower that the casino now has. Because like we don't do anything. We're not consulting. We're a software company. So we sell you, give you our software. The thing about it is like that level of questioning and hypothesis testing that the casino is either went through or is going through now, they can do that with Narrator really fast and then narrow it down and then figure those things out. And they can even ask like, how has like attending a sponsored fancy event impacted likelihood to do whatever it is that you're trying to measure? Easily Narrator, so that data comes back in and it's recursive and you're learning. And we talked about time, everything's changing in time. So as that gets better, the impact should be growing and we should see that impact grow. All that stuff is kind of what the casino would be doing with Narrator to answer those kind of iterative questions. The point is that time between it, like the casino, this is what we talked about with human robot interaction, is that the casino owner has built his business because his intuition is so good. Like, here's a joke that we used to have a lot in data science, in like AI, which is like, if an AI tells you something that is counterintuitive, assume the data is wrong. like AI can never tell you something that's truly counterintuitive. It should quantify your intuition. So what I want to do is grab these like people who are like experts in these casinos, take their hypotheses, take their thoughts, and then instantly live give them those answers as their data person or them are using Narrator to answer those questions. And then what you see them happening is they're like, oh, that makes sense. I forgot about this thing. Okay, let's add that. Oh, I forgot about this thing. Let's do this. And I think that's like the conversation you have with a computer that feels really well. And you have to be able to answer questions in minutes. Otherwise, if I'm waiting a month for my data team to go prepare me that data and give me a dashboard, like, it just doesn't work that way. And I think that's when I talk about when we started this whole conversation with why I think a lot about back to the human-robot interaction is that humans' intuitions are incredible. Their ability to come up with a follow-up, their ability to understand why something's happening, so damn good. But data gives them a line. Like, I might think it's good, but I might not realize that it's like a little bit better or a fuck ton better. And that's the value of data. And that's what you want your data team to feel like. And right now, data doesn't feel that way. Data feels like I kind of have to come up with it. And then it goes into a black hole. And I get like a pretty plot at the end. And I'm like, okay, cool. Like, sure, now you showed me like average spent by everyone in casino. And then the person's like, well, people who you're looking here, some people have been doing this for 10 years. And they spend $1 every day. And then somebody spent $1 million yesterday. That person I want to capitalize on. And then they're like, okay, give me another month and I'll get back to you. And now you have average spent divided by time. And they're like, okay, well, yeah, but what about like the fact that this person has played one game and lost all their money or played 100 games? And they're like, give me a month. And then it loses the intuition. And that's what makes Narrator's experience so much better. And customers really end up like being like, wow, this is how data should feel.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think you did a very good job of pointing out a flaw in my own logic around like this hypothetical casino company where I said they have their algorithm. Their algorithm better keep changing because the world around them is changing, and it feels so big and heavy and full of inertia that they're never going to want to change that, which I actually think happens a lot of the time with organizations that have honed something over many years. They're like, we're not changing this. You know how hard it is to change this? We're never going to change it. And that's going to make them less and less relevant as a business going forward if they don't start iterating further.
Oh, 100%. One of the things that Narrator does that our customers will tell you is like the biggest thing that they love is every time you ask a question in Narrator re-asks that question for you every week.
Oh, wow. Cool. And
because of the time series nature, we're looking at everything in time. So something that mattered can then no longer matter. Something that mattered can actually flip because you're taking actions. If nothing is changing, then what the fuck are you doing in your business? Like you want it to no longer matter because you want to saturate your customer by maximizing it. Like this happens so often that we talk about like, if you read the book Tyranny of Metrics, it talks a lot about that, where like, as you start, like everything eventually saturates. It's like, you can't run the same campaign for 100 years. Like it's just not going to work. Like you can't, yes, customers back then who used BlackBerries might have been the biggest feature, like, but you can't just now have all your apps on BlackBerry. Like no one knows what that is. So like understanding that the world is changing, and then like what ends up happening, instead of you having to kind of remember that like, you want that instant email to be like, hey, that decision you made based on that analysis, it's now different because you need to know this assumption has changed because your customer is changing. Who they are, what they're doing, their behavior is all changing. And that's why we end up running every single question that you ask Narrator, we'll rerun it for you and rethink through it every week for you automatically so that when those things change, you are aware. And that's the biggest thing that like a lot of you, when you deal with like younger data analysts or younger data scientists, they love like looking at things in time overall. And they're like, oh, this sticks out. And you're like, no. Don't look at overall. Over time, this could have been good and now it doesn't matter. And this is kind of all the things that make like A/B testing really weird. Like A/B testing is just a momentary snapshot. And I always draw this line where I show squiggles and I'm like, are these two lines different? And you're like, no, they're just squiggling. And I'm like, well, if I zoom in on this 1 week, this one is like 10 times more than the other. And they're like, yeah, but that's like squiggle. And I'm like, well, you're running your A/B test in that week. And if you forget time, then you just see that big difference and you think it's important. But when you look at it, and it might later on separate, and now it's important. That's why analysis needs to be constantly run. That's why time is critical. And that's why you need to kind of think about the world as that it's evolving and you're reacting.
And I normally would ask you, like, if there's anything from your perspective in the work that you're doing with Narrator.ai that might be applicable to those that just aren't going to have a chance to use your software or purchase your software or what have you. But I think you just talked about that. I think the key here that anyone can do, whether, regardless of whether or not they can be your customer, is challenge those assumptions, test the analysis that you've been using on a frequent basis, because otherwise you could be doing something that is you're intending to do good things with the work that you're doing, but it could actually be going astray, and you wouldn't know if you don't test that hypothesis more than just once and do it regularly.
Yeah. Like if I had to give like 3 things that I would say, that's one of them. It's a critical one. Remember time. Like time is such an important thing that we often forget. And 3, as a data leader, you actually train your org to not ask questions by making the time it takes to answer questions really long. Like you have a wealth of knowledge. Like no AI, it's as like I'm an AI expert here telling you that no AI will do better than your, especially in behavioral, like than your hundreds of employees and people who built a business based on intuition. They're the ones who have things. Allowing them to ask and answer questions really fast is going to make the biggest impact. Think about it. The largest companies we know today have operated on Excel sheets and intuition for a long time, and they built monster companies. And like, there's no company that has built anything incredible with just AI running it. Like AI is a great tool, and you can say that like, yes, in this trained environment, AI might outperform in like image recognition than a person. But like, remember, that's such a small part. So stop investing so much time and resources in AI and start remembering that you have a wealth of great questions. Your data people are experts in asking questions. And if you're able to unlock those questions and actually activate that intelligence, it's going to be critical. And I think the biggest factor is allowing those people to ask questions and follow-up questions really, really, really fast. Because like, you need to do that. If I'm waiting a month, I'm going to forget my train of thoughts, and like, it wouldn't do it. Think about how incoherent your like essay would be if you wrote 1 line every month like that, and you couldn't like that essay would never get done, and it would be terrible. Like that's not what you wish on anyone. So
yeah,
you need that time. You need it, and it needs to be like really smooth. So doesn't matter what tool you use, figure out how to achieve that goal. I'm biased. I think that Narrator is the best way of doing it. But if you are currently waiting that long, then you're probably not using the right tools, or you're not thinking about it differently. So that's my recommendation, those 3 things.
Ahmed, this has been an awesome conversation, and I definitely agree. You are passionate about this topic, and it's really informative and really interesting. And this whole conversation has just flown by. So thank you for sharing your wisdom. Thank you for being on the show today. I really appreciate it.
No, thank you. I love it. I love that we were able to dive so far high and so far middle and go in between. And it's one of those like experiences that I will not forget. So I appreciate you for creating such an incredible, memorable experience for me and hopefully your audience.
Oh, thank you so much. And so what for folks that want to follow up with you, what's the best way for them to find you following the show?
Yeah, so you can search for my name on LinkedIn. I'm active on that. I'm active on Twitter at AE4AI, the number 4. And if you're interested in like just talking through these problems or anything, I do allow people to ask me anything all the time. You can literally email me at Ahmed@Narrator.ai, and I will honestly be there, show you Narrator, or give you a guidance. Like, I'm here to help.
That's awesome.
Oh, and our website. Check out Narrator.ai. We have a great blog.
Definitely. And so, and thank you all out there for joining us today. As always, you'll find more information about our guests and links in the show notes. We'll include all the stuff that Ahmed just talked about. Go to dataleadershiplessons.com to subscribe and check out past episodes and accelerate your journey with training at dataleadershiptraining.com. Stay safe during these unusual times and go make an impact.